Welcome to Inner Threads, a podcast on healing, wholeness, growth, and connection. Join us for shared insights and lived wisdom as we braid and weave together our common stories and experiences to help you along your own healing path. Inner Threads is hosted by Courtney Kaplan, Jessica Luke, and I'm Bert Nelson. I'm a spiritual counselor and the executive director of a nonprofit conservation farm in Western North Carolina. I'm interested in how spirituality, science, and shamanism come together to help us heal and live more fully as ourselves.
I'm Jessica Luke. I work as a spiritual counselor, and I'm the founder of the Well-Grounded Soul and the 1440 Health Collective, a healing center in Bethesda, Maryland. I support people through times of change, helping them reconnect with their intuition, personal power, and the wisdom of the natural world.
And I'm Courtney Kaplan. I'm a coach based in Oakland, California. And after years in the corporate world, I founded Iconic Leadership Coaching. My transformative coaching helps people create a good life, both personally and professionally. And I use multiple modalities, including emotional, physical, and spiritual tools to help my clients find peace and power.
Welcome back to Inner Threads. It is so wonderful to be back here with Courtney and Jessica talking about consciousness. I am so excited for this conversation. It's lovely to be landing here with you both today. How are you?
Doing all right, Bert. I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm cooking. It's getting warm here, which is nice. So I'm great. Super happy to be here talking about this topic.
Springtime warmth, starting to cook the seeds, right? Today, before we get started, let's talk about some inner threads. What's going on for you as you kind of land here today and we start this conversation? Courtney, you want to get us started?
Sure. I think one of the inner threads that's been cooking for me is funny that cooking and springtime are coming up already. But I spent the day yesterday in my garden planting, replanting, trimming back, imagining what could be out there, and realizing how much joy I get from just being outside in nature, which is something that's easy to forget because it's easy to be an indoor cat and, stay inside a bunch. And yesterday the weather was beautiful. I have 5 chickens that live at my house. I let them out. They were roaming around, and it was just really great to spend some time dreaming and planting. And I live in the Bay Area in California, so it's pretty warm already. And we'll probably have one more little cold, rainy patch before real springtime sets in. But that's what I've been kind of up to and thinking about, this connection with nature.
Courtney, I remember visiting your beautiful place once, and there was this hawk that was living like right outside, and was just so loud and joyful. And this morning, I was outside walking the puppy, and there was a hawk above me, just flying around and calling, and it was such a beautiful experience. And so, as you were talking just now, it brought that forward, and such a joyful memory for me.
That hawk is still there, my friend, and still, or one of its descendants or something. I don't know how hawks work, but it is out there screeching and calling. And we were outside looking and seeing where it was nesting. And I think it goes out and does either mating calls or the babies are hungry, or I don't know what's happening, but there is some noise coming from those beautiful hawks.
I love that so much. Jessica, what are some inner threads for you right now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just a little hawk story too, quickly, is because of the warmth here, we've been getting those higher air pockets. And the other day there were 3 vultures and 3 hawks just soaring above. And I just stared at that for as long as I could until they wafted off into the distance. So yay, hawk energy coming in here today. Love it. My inner thread is really about our topic, because, at the end of our last recording, we always talk about what we're going to talk about on the next one. And it's consciousness, which we'll dive into. But I feel like the moment that was decided that that's where we're going to go next, consciousness has been coming at me from all these different angles. And I supported a class through the Sacred Stream over the weekend. And on day 1, our teacher talked about how when you engage with consciousness will begin to work within you. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's happening. And it's just been really interesting from Michael Pollan has a new book out about consciousness, and that just started, he's like blasting all over media, getting word out about his book. And, uh, just different things have been coming in as insight for me about consciousness and different ways that we can tap into it. So it's just funny how we made that decision, and it just feels like it's been working with me ever since. So that thread has been weaving its way through me since we met a couple weeks ago. So it's exciting. Really
That's
exciting.
so cool.
That is so cool. May consciousness find us. I love
Right?
that. I love that. A few inner threads for me have been around reflecting on letting go of old structures that no longer serve and opening to the unknown new structures that are wanting to take shape. I follow some astrology, and we've had some eclipses recently. And for me, it's really interesting that some of the things that I'm being asked to step out of or away from are these old patterns of service and that cause harm, and the way I relate to the material ordinary reality structures of like work and employment in the world, which is really really interesting. And then on the inviting things in, it's really stepping into the unknown and allowing the spiritual experience, the unseen experience to unfold and to hold, because that is really the experience that holds all of the material. And I think there's a teaching that's coming through for me with these shifts, these cosmic astrological shifts, and maybe quantum shifts as well, where I'm starting to embrace that and really hold and understand how our material physical reality is held within the broader unseen spiritual cosmic astral realm of things, and to rest more fully in that and trust more fully in that. And it's definitely a work in progress for me, inviting me to be a little more patient, but it's really been enjoyable to see how when we do let go of old structures that are no longer serving, we can really free ourselves to a much a greater experience of ease is how I experience it. So that's what's going on for me.
Beautiful.
Just that little thing, huh?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
is
that
that
little
it?
thing. Oh, and a long time to get to just that little thing too, it seems like sometimes. And I guess in a way also consciousness, right? It begins to scratch at this idea of what is consciousness. So I can't think of a better place to start. Jessica, what is consciousness to you?
Yeah, I mean, this beautiful segues from piece to piece here through us. So, gosh, what is consciousness? What an incredibly big question. And I think it's at the forefront of what we're experiencing a lot today, because people can kind of think of it, is it conscious because I'm awake, because I've woken up in the daytime and I'm out of bed, so I'm conscious. I have consciousness. And yes, yeah, that on one level is being conscious. But what is consciousness from a higher level, from an emotional, a spiritual level, is more of being awake to your own experiences, to being aware of yourself and your surroundings and your reactions and patterns, and being aware of thoughts and emotions. And I think people can get a little like, it's not a binary thing. It's not like you're either conscious or unconscious, or it's a work in progress. You're working through these states of awareness and awakening and being more conscious, more aware of how you react, uh more into understanding your own conditioning, your own wounds, your own levels of discontent and suffering, as the Buddhists would say, but just your own unhappiness and the ways that that is affecting your life. And that realizing also that consciousness is surrounding us, other living things. It's not just a human experience. Animals have consciousness and plants have consciousness, and these other bigger concepts of all these living things we all are related in the way that we draw energy from the forces around us. And then the more that we're aware of those forces, the higher consciousness, the more awake that we are, and the more that we can engage in our world with more awareness. So I tried to narrow that down, but it's a big question. But I love that we're going here, because I think I just would love for people to be able to open up that it doesn't have to be a certain way, that it is an invitation to wake up out of old patterns that maybe you were stuck in and limited by for a long time. So it's just seeing those things, I think. Courtney, what are your what well, how would you answer that question? What is consciousness?
Gosh, you did such a beautifully articulate unpacking of what consciousness is. And for me, I will say, as a coach, when I was in coaching training, I chose a path of ontological coaching. And the word ontological or ontology means like the naming of things, or or organizing the things in your world, or organizing your world with some kind of structure or knowing. And I really liked that form of coaching because you're able to help someone, like help the fish see that they're surrounded by water instead of, or help the person see and rename and relabel and reorganize the situations, relationships, environment around them, if that makes sense. So there's like an old story of the person who's, building a little brick and making a little mud brick, and someone comes up and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, I'm a brick maker. I make these bricks." And then the person goes up to a second guy who's making bricks and goes, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm a wall builder. I'm building walls that are going to last a really long time. I'm designing these wonderful walls." And then the person goes up to the third brick maker and says, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm building a cathedral. I'm making this amazing, testament to God or whatever that's going to stand long beyond and be finished after I'm gone and stand long after that." And it's a simple story, but I think it kind of illustrates how we can change our point of view and change our perspectives about things. And in some way, that's like consciousness expanding, understanding a bigger picture or a different picture or more choices than we were aware of before, or a bigger system of what's going on or what we're involved in and how we are happy about it or need to change that. So, for me, that consciousness and the reason that someone might want to become more conscious is there's freedom and choice that come with that consciousness, that suddenly you can zoom out, you can zoom in, you can see your relationships with other people, other items, elements, plants, the environment, your society that you're in, and make choices instead of being kind of on autopilot, which is what I would consider maybe unconscious. Autopilot is suffering. Maybe you wanted to get out of that suffering. You drink a couple beers, you watch Netflix all night, you go back to the grind the next day. That seems like a very unconscious pattern. Suffering, try and relieve suffering, suffering, trying to relieve suffering in ways that it's kind of a cycle that's not actually getting you anywhere.
I don't know that I need to add anything to what either to what either of you have said there. That is incredible. I tend to think quite structurally and in terms of systems, whether macro systems like the universe, the cosmos, astral, or astrological work, but also the micro and how different vibrational forces influence each other and how we interact in the world through those interactions of vibration. It also points to the concept of interdependence in Buddhism, which reminds us that we are not acting alone, that we are not alone in this universe, that the actions, the thoughts that we have, the words that we speak, the actions that we take in the world have an impact on other living beings. And that also for me is freeing because I can think about it in terms of, oh, it's not this thing that's happening might not necessarily be happening because of anything I've done, but because I'm in a particular place within this system and something's going on in the system and that's having an effect on me. And when we bring our awareness or our perspective to that layer of understanding, we wake up to it. We can begin to see, oh, that's what's causing the suffering, what's generating the suffering. That's something that I've been doing to create it. And that's something that I haven't been doing and can maybe hold a little more compassion for myself around, where I was judging myself or holding myself to an unfair standard. Now I can hold compassion for myself. Because I can see the other circumstances that are also influencing my experience. So that's one layer that really comes forward here as we're talking. I think Courtney, the way you talked about unconsciousness as being the autopilot is absolutely how I relate to it. fully. And so waking up is the answer, right? And I was doing a social media campaign probably a year and a half ago now that was all about waking up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. Um, and I think it's so important that we realize it's not like I was asleep and now I'm awake and so I'm conscious. It's about understanding that we're creating the realities that we live in through our relationships that we make, through our perspective, how we choose to understand the interdependence aspect of things. And so, what is consciousness? For all my Douglas Adam friends out there, it's 42, right? What's the answer to life? 42. It's like an unanswerable question, or one that if it had an answer would lose its meaning. But but I think we can begin by starting to see ourselves and understand our experience from different lenses and ways of being.
One of the things I'm interested in hearing each of your maybe your experience or your point of view about is, I guess consciousness isn't really like a light switch, like, or I guess it could be, but for a lot of people, it's like maybe it's on and then it's off, or it's on and it gets brighter and then it's off. Like it's not, doesn't, for me, it has never felt like a very linear thing of like checking boxes, making steps in a, predictable pattern into some kind of upwardness or more consciousness. But I wonder what your own experience is of consciousness and becoming more conscious in your lives. Has it been straight line, stairs? What and I bring it up, I guess, because I think sometimes I hear people get frustrated.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I just want to say I was listening to this talk about near death experiences. And I think those are from the stories that I was hearing, those are the people that can sometimes get that like light switch on and off. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, life is completely different than we think it actually is. So that's interesting. And it's funny because I was, as you were saying that, like, how do you see it? I see it as a spiral and kind of a room. Like you might start off on the ground level and you're like, oh, okay, I'm awake. I have this new layer of understanding about relational patterns and about, kind of ways that I overreact to things or take things personally, but okay, I understand it. I see it. And then as I move through the world and encounter more challenges or more ways that consciousness is working with me to say, hey, do you really see that that you don't take things personally anymore? It'll give you opportunities to see, are you really taking those steps? And then I feel like, and that's that spiral, like a spiral staircase. And then at the same time you're going up, and I often find for myself that I hit a ceiling, hit a really like crunchy spot, a spot where it's like, oh, I got to really dig into some inner work here and figure out what is that next layer of opening? What is that next step of raising my ears ringing as I say that? What's that next step up of understanding a layer, understanding a relational dynamic, opening up, kind of what you're saying, Cora, like opening up, zooming out more. How can I zoom out more to gain a better understanding? How can we be that hawk in the sky, observing our understanding? And then it's like, oh, you kind of moved through that ceiling and now I'm in a new room. And I've moved through that spiral. So I kind of see it as like constriction when things get tough, but spaciousness when you gain a higher level of understanding of your own experience. And, for me, I remember pretty much the moment where consciousness came in and offered me another way. And I was really suffering and personal relationships. And I was meditating and I just asked, what do I need to see? And it was like I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know what I'm talking to, but I need help. I don't know what's going on. And I got an answer right away. And it was so clear. And I was like, nope, not going there. That is not what I wanted to see. And it was like, okay, you asked, here's an option, take it or leave it. And it was with so much kindness and compassion, but just like, here's an option to explore. And it was in that moment, that choice point of stepping into something really difficult. And I remember crying for 2 days, probably like, how am I going to get through this? And And I did. And, I think there's parts of our unconscious self that wants to hold on to those old things. Like you were saying, Courtney, oh, just dive into Netflix for the weekend and numb it, or go grab a bottle of wine and numb it. It'll go away. But there's also an option to say, no, let's look at that and come at it with curiosity. And what could happen on the other side of it? So that's kind of my experience with conscious, not linear, spiral, moving through crunchy, breaking through walls, but coming out the other side more spacious.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledging that it can be crunchy because I think there's another perception that you're kind of sitting in a lotus position with your legs crossed, in a nice all white outfit in a real peaceful space with some pretty candles, and boom, you're conscious or have more consciousness. And a lot of times it can be a much more tricky journey. What about you, Bert? What's your experience been? Kind of step by step, check the boxes, follow instructions, get a predictable result?
Oh my goodness, Courtney. You have no idea. That's it, right? That led me to my lowest point of suffering, actually. Not I don't mean to make light of that for myself at all here. I do hold it very, very close and very seriously, but I think it is important to acknowledge that um, when I was 30, I had the job I'd always wanted, the status and the position and the car and the house and the partner and the dogs and everything. And there was a morning I remember waking up and not wanting to be here anymore. And what was so challenging for me in that moment was like, how could that be? How could I have everything I've ever wanted, have worked as hard as I've worked and be working as hard as I am and not want to be here? Like what is that about? And that's actually the place that let me start to ask those questions and look within myself and wake up from the nightmare or the haze or the whatever it was that I was finding myself in, doing all the things I should be doing, checking all the boxes that society tells me I should be checking, and still not wanting to be here. And so plant medicine is a big part of my journey and finding my way back, and something that I think we'll probably talk about at greater length another time. But this experience of working with plant consciousness and coming out of it and knowing that I wasn't alone, knowing that things weren't necessarily the way that I was holding them, that there was a different way to look at things, right? Courtney, to your point about perspective shift, that was so helpful for me to have in that moment, to know that it doesn't have to be this way, that there is another way, and I can be creative with how I figure that out for myself. And what's interesting now is I have my way of thinking about unconsciousness is how far away I am from myself. So how separated am I from my experience? If I'm not here, then I can't be present. And if I can't be present, then I don't actually know what my experience is in this moment. And so where do I find consciousness? I find consciousness as I get closer to myself, as I align to my own sense of power, to my own values, to what I know is right and true in the world. And when I hold there, I see consciousness everywhere around me. I see it in the butterflies and the hummingbirds and the flowers and the food that I eat and the medicine that I make. Just all of it comes forward through life in a way that feels very real and very vibrant. It's always there. That field of consciousness, that field of life is always there. It's me, I realize, that has gone astray from myself. And it's coming back to myself that it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. Oh, it was always here.
Yeah, but beautiful reflection because I think it's pretty common for people to go for the house, the new car, the condo, the vacation to a special place, a dog, another dog, a kid, whatever it is, and then kind of feel like, wait, what, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, or I'm not sure that this is what I signed up for, or that moment of realizing like, did I just go the wrong way? That can't be right. So thanks for sharing that part of your experience.
I think one other layer here too that I often need to remind myself of is that I come from a traditional Christian upbringing. I don't practice that currently. The idea was heaven was above, right? It was always this up and out and away from you, and you weren't good enough and you need to be cleansed, and there is this place. And what I find to be more true is this idea of the lotus flower in Buddhism needing to emerge from the fertile, messy, dirty, dark, scary, muddy depths to become this beautiful, impossible piece of inspiration, to meet the sunlight and to live in that space between the material and the light. And so that's where I come back to for myself is, am I allowing the depths to rise to meet me? Right. Or am I trying to like be somewhere else? And where is consciousness? I don't know where it is, but I think a lot of us might relate to it in a directional way. And if that's you, like, where is consciousness? Yeah, where have you found it? I think is the question we're trying to get at here.
Yeah, I have a lot of, conversations with people because, right, that is like, science cannot find that. Where does your consciousness live in your body? Nobody kn we s that is, like, the ongoing battle, and it's that leap of faith into that there is something that's out there that will support you and hold you if you decide to, introspect and look, "Wait, I have all these exterior things, but I'm still really fundamentally unhappy or suffering internally." Because I think, like, to that point of, like, sitting on the couch and watching Netflix and numbing yourself or, like, creating that exterior sense of safety with having the right job and the car and the house and all the things, but it's kind of living in that unconsciousness if you're still kind of asleep to life. So what do you think that effect that has on us as humans and maybe even the collective, like what we're seeing in the world nowadays?
I mean, I think you just answered your own question of like, look at what we're seeing in the world these days. Yes. What could it all add up to? Well, look around. It's a real interesting moment to see what unconsciousness can lead to. And even in the messiest, darkest, most confusing times, there's there's more awareness possible that we aren't always tapped into, right? So one of the things I think to share that has come up for me in the past week is kind of an overwhelm of the realities of the world and the news that's happening now and how bad it is. And that is very compelling. It really triggers kind of a fight or flight mechanism that really can shove you right into the unconscious mode. It's too much to hold, right? And start to realize, like, oh, wait, yes, this is part of the story. News is part of what's going on, but there's actually even more. Or there's different ways that I can show up, or there's different ways that I have an opportunity to stay conscious in this moment. Maybe not as a, lone soldier by yourself, but within community, with a friend, with a group, with family members, or whatever that can be. Even when it's kind of the worst of the worst, there's choices. And you may get sucked into Netflix for a couple days. That's okay. You can always kind of be sucked into Netflix and be like, this is not helping as much as I thought it would. And then see what other opportunities you might have. I just wanted to bring that up because I think so specifically right now, it's a place where it's like, consciousness, have you seen the news? It's bad.
That's the space I'm inhabiting right now. And the challenge of that space is, when you're trying to find consciousness, whatever that means to you as an individual, and you look around at all of the pain and suffering that unconscious decisions are making in the world, it's really hard. It's really hard to not want to run away and run screaming. And the other morning, I was sitting down to meditate, and I opened my phone, and I I never check my messages, my emails, anything before I meditate in the morning, ever. And I don't know why somehow Chrome was open instead of my meditation timer. And this was a morning that our country attacked another country. I don't know that I want to really open the details of it here, but it was alarming. And Immediately I was shaken. Immediately I see the headline and I want to dive in. I need to know about the carnage and the pain and the hate and what are we doing now and how can I live in this world? And as my thumb is going to press the button, I I just get this little nudge. I look down at the article right below and it's about the Eastern Band of Cherokee in my part of the country having a sacred mound returned to them. And immediately it struck me I have a choice. It didn't feel like I did at first. It felt inevitable. Like I had to click that first link, that I had to pour my energy into the terror and the horror and the pain and the suffering before I've even taken care of myself, right? And that's not true.
Yeah.
We have options. There are other places where we can focus the light that is happening in the world. I think it's always there if we're looking for it, if we're trying to find it. The good, I mean, is it's there, and we can be agents of that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Love that.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's making me think about the Buddhist monks that did that walk for peace for 200 some miles, and they came here to DC, and I went and was in that field, and I just watched them walk by, but it has stuck with me, and it's that choice, right? Like, here are people exemplifying a completely different path, just quiet, peaceful walking, and coming through our nation's capital that is a bit different energy.
Well, and can I add on something that you said perfectly there is I was in that field.
Yeah.
That the it's not just guys in a line walking or people saying they're walking for peace. It actually creates a field.
Yeah, exactly, Courtney, and it's making me think, like, the momentum that that gained. Like, they started back in November, I think, and no one really knew, but until more news stories, more people again, to your point, Bert, probably looking at scrolling through news, but seeing this other really cool story that's positive, and the momentum that that gained and I would guess, millions of people that were at least aware of it, conscious of what was going on, and how it affected, a large swath of our country and the world. Because I know there were people that I've spoke to in different countries that had heard about it, and what an amazing thing to happen to our country in a time where really not so great things are happening. So, yeah, that field of consciousness, their field of peace was palpable, and I know we do a lot of work, so we can actually, perceive those fields, but I know even people that aren't fully attuned to that could feel it and perceive it, and that's what drew them to want to just stand on the side of the road and watch these men walk by, 'cause there is a way that that helps enliven your own awareness, your own sense of peace and joy and consciousness and awareness.
Something I've been hearing us talk about is the relationship between choice and consciousness. I don't know that we've named that explicitly, but there's this idea that that consciousness almost gives permission to have choice, or gives us the power of choice. That if we're unconscious, then the choice isn't meaningfully there. I'm wondering if how that lands with either of you.
Yeah, I feel like when I fall into unconsciousness, I'm just on autopilot, so it's not a choice. The choice is made before I even realize it. And when we are more conscious, we have that little pause. So we can pause and then maybe see some choices and then make a choice instead of just down the well-worn path of unconsciousness of the way we did it before, or the way that we were raised or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the stories that we hold on to about ourselves or the way things should be, or the patterns that we don't even know we're unconscious that we're engaging in. And, those can be reactions, those can be, jumping to being scared of something without really having a reason to be scared. Like it's just that fight, flight, freeze. It just triggers that, you know, sympathetic part of our nervous system to be like, ah, just no, stay with what you know. It's safe here. And that limits our choices. I don't think we have choice when we're living from that place of fear and being um stuck in those old patterns and those old stories. So yeah, it is, it all comes down to choice and having that enough agency to know, and that builds, right? That's those steps or paths or the lines that we all walk to get here. Because it's not my experience is it's not linear.
Well, and I would also add, like, for people, if you're listening to this thinking, yeah, it must be nice to have choice, doesn't seem like I ever do, right? Like this idea of choice starts to happen for me when I do a couple things. One, when I notice that I'm feeling stuck or in that mode of, oh my gosh, it's starting to get uncomfortable. And I ask myself, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know everything about this situation. Or what is it that I'm not seeing that I need to be aware of in this situation? Or what else is possible in this moment? What else might be possible right now? Those kinds of questions kind of turn me away from automatic programming and business as usual or the same old ruts to other ideas of what might be happening. And I think our brain's kind of working away when you ask your brain what else might be possible here. Your brain is like, ooh, I have a job. I have to answer that question and kind of starts to try to answer that, which is probably more constructive and starts to open up more awarenesses and more consciousness than here I am. I've named it. It's a problem. This stinks. I want to get away from it. I'm going down my old escape hatch, fight or flee, freeze habit. And I notice, I'll add, and I notice as I get older, as much as I'd like to say I know more because I'm older or I know more because I'm wiser, the truth is I feel like I know less and less, or I'm not as certain as I was, or I see the times that I actually do make mistakes, or I see the ways that I was wrong, or I didn't have a full understanding, and being able to meet that with some humor and some compassion so that I kind of realize, oh, wow, there's sometimes I'm not getting the whole picture, the whole understanding, or I might have landed on a conclusion that's not complete, and that's okay. I can continue to broaden my understanding and learn, make new choices, have more conversations to kind of make my understanding more complete. And I'm blessed to have two teenagers in my house that know everything to remind me that I don't know anything. Like they have the answers, and so I don't have to have the answers anymore. I can't have the answers. I'm always wrong, and they're, always very, very right. So that's helpful in keeping my ego and assumptions in check.
What a gift to have those two little beings
What a gift.
of the beginner's mind, right?
What a gift.
I I really like that you brought that forward, Courtney, because I think that there are so many people who cling to what they think they know as a form of safety, right? Or comfort or whatever they feel like
Yeah.
they're getting out of it. And you have to let go of that, I think, in order to be able to start thinking about who am I and answering that question of consciousness and what it means to us.
Or who am I now? Like sometimes it's like, okay, maybe in the past those things were true, or maybe you did have it all figured out. That's cool. Then who am I now?
But that's the impermanence piece, right? We talked about interdependence earlier, that we're a part of this network and system. And the impermanence reminds us that all things change always, and that our attachment to the way that things are disrupts the natural flow and creates suffering. And so I love this reframing of who am I now, and knowing that that can change and maybe should change, right? Or it's natural to change as we grow and evolve as human beings.
Yeah, like how much suffering in the world comes from people not seeing their own stories or their own inner patterns and not having a moment to reflect. It's the root.
What what's it like for both of you to be looking for consciousness? I don't want to name that for you. That's how I'm going to call it for myself, looking for consciousness. What is it like for you doing that in a world that does seem to be so unconscious? Like, how do you manage that? We've talked a little bit about what the world is like, but how do you as individuals manage it for yourselves?
I have done a big deep dive this year with compassion because I actually started to find myself having a hard time with it because of the heaviness that was happening all around. And I found myself getting tangled in that. And so I really doubled down on my work on compassion. And, that's one of our a fundamental um, teaching training that we go through. And really it started with myself because I was getting mad at myself that I wasn't being more compassionate outwardly. So I got myself in a little compassion tangle. And I found that if I could really reframe that those Buddhist tenets of the Four Noble Truths that like to be human is to have problems, is to suffer, is to go through hardship and be able to hold that for people that they're in those places. That just helped kind of find that equanimity, find that middle, that even keel, at least for a little bit for me. And to also work on not being reactive. That's been a big key for me in a world of unconsciousness and walking around. And I think that there's a lot of people that aren't conscious. I don't want to try to give a percentage or guess at a number of people that comparatively are working on higher consciousness and waking up and kind of getting out of these patterns versus those that are stuck. um, but I want to say that there's not as many people that are really doing this big work and trying to understand and bring compassion to that, but also not being reactive to those people that are stuck in their places of suffering and the places of unconsciousness and don't necessarily want to look at those stories and those beliefs that they hold on to. And just, yeah, I find that for me, being reactive is when I sense a reaction, I like that's my internal, woof, okay, just take a breath. What is that reaction coming up? And that's at least how I try to move as consciously as I can through a world that is unconscious, of just owning my own reaction and questioning where is that my attachment to something, or what if I'm frustrated by somebody, what is that frustration trying to teach me and tell me, and keep it to myself because most people don't have the ears to hear things or the eyes to see things to wake up. And just setting, this positive intention, holding people with, that feeling of that field of peace that I talked about with the Buddhist monks, like holding that field of energy for people. They may not be able to perceive it, but you never know when they will. And so I try to move through the world just sending that with intention, however that looks, to those people that are kind of moving through unconsciously. But it's not easy moving through the world these days. But yeah, Courtney, what are your take on that?
Well, I'll be honest, I've been really frustrated now and again. And I think I might have said this on another podcast with the two of you, but I was talking to you, Bert, about how frustrated I was and how upset I was. And Bert just started laughing and said, "Oh, Courtney, you got to remember, you're dealing with muggles. You're dealing with muggles." And somehow that that not to like demean anyone or but that like made it much more light. Like, of course, they're not it's okay. And by the way, going back to I don't know. Maybe the way they're living their life is the best thing for them. I don't know anything about it. So sometimes with that consciousness versus unconsciousness of the world, I remind myself I don't know. I also could be running into somebody who's having a bad day, and otherwise they are more conscious or generous or giving or peaceful or whatever. So trying to give some of the benefit of the doubt without kind of letting go of the reins and being like, who cares? Everything's okay these days. Um, by sticking to what I know is appropriate or beneficial or useful, and in my work and at home, trying to be able to sit with someone and maybe point to the exit, point to another way with a question or a little bit of nudging or a little bit of humor to help someone maybe unhook themselves. And maybe they aren't going to go on a totally different life path, but in that moment, if they can relieve themselves of a little bit of suffering or a little bit of unconsciousness, that can help. But certainly, boy, I'm on the spiral as much as anybody. So I've got good days and bad days myself. And so trying not to get too caught up in, I know I'm right, they're wrong, but like, hey, we're all in this together. And I can control myself and my actions. and I can help others to the extent that I can help others, and that's what I can do. I mean, that's how I deal with muggles, Bert.
And you said and you say, "That's all I can do." Like it's not a Herculean lifelong task to work toward. Courtney, I know you and I have also talked about, particularly in the knitting context, process versus project knitting, and the idea for me of knitting for the love of knitting and knitting because you really want to get this project done, or you want to see the end of it. And when I apply that to consciousness, I try to think, am I on this path as a project person? Like, am I trying to get to consciousness, that goal? And if I am, maybe there's something misaligned there that I need to check out. Or am I on the path of consciousness because that's where I want to be? Because that's where my experience feels right and aligned. And knowing that I don't know that it will happen in this lifetime, whatever that means, or the next. But I do know that when I live my life aligned with my values and express myself fully, that I do feel better. I feel more alive. I feel more present. Like I want to be here. And it's easier to manage those times where things feel overwhelming in the world or in your work life or personal life or whatever the case might be.
I love that, and I just wanna share one of my favorite instructions that I had gotten for a loving kindness meditation. So, loving kindness is just the idea that you're extending a hope for well-being and peace and general goodness to another person, right? And, without attachment, without any attachment. And in the instruction I originally heard, the teacher said, "And don't start saying, 'I'm gonna send loving kindness to my best friend or my someone that you like.' And don't start with someone that you don't like or have an issue with or a hitch with. Start with somebody neutral, the mailman. Start with somebody neutral, the person that works at the little restaurant that you love. Start with somebody neutral because there's just less exchange going on already that might need to be cleaned up. It's just neutral. Yes, I want to see my mailman have a smooth day. He seems like a nice person. I want him to have peace in his life. I want him to have a good, whatever make a nice evening. Hope the mail route goes well. It's easy to extend that because there's no resistance where even when you're extending that goodness to maybe a friend, you're like, well, they do owe me $5 and it seems like I'm always the one picking up lunch, even though I love them. Like there's no background or old, material there. So if you're thinking like, well, how can I be conscious in an unconscious world? I want to start to be more compassionate or I want to start to extend more loving kindness. That teaching of starting with the neutral could be really useful right now because there's so much of the good guys, the bad guys, the this, the that, the these people and those people. Just maybe for now to start, put those things aside and start with the mailman and just start with something that, is going to help you just have an easy exchange of well wishes, compassion, loving kindness, and build that muscle a bit first. And I think that right now, just with a world that's so charged, finding neutral places to practice anything could be a good idea.
It's mind blowing, Courtney, and like its middle way simplicity here that it shows us how we can begin to cultivate consciousness in our own experience. And as you were talking, the gardening metaphor comes forward again for me. Like, are you pouring salt water on the seeds that you just planted, or are you pouring fertilizer on the seeds that you just planted? And like that gets to be a choice in and has an influence on how those seeds emerge and grow. And when we think about from that neutral perspective, how can I hold this field of loving kindness? We are cultivating that fertilizer in the world for ourselves and for those who are close to us. And that has a real effect. It has a real ripple effect that that is palpable.
And we're kind of wired to, even when we're sending that loving kindness to a neutral party, we feel better ourselves. And then we're kind of a little stronger in our ability to extend loving kindness to the person that's, that you like ish, then you can kind of expand because you're building that muscle of loving kindness that kind of comes back to you, makes you feel more at peace and more relaxed, more able to be open and kind to a wider spectrum.
So I'm curious here, like, I think some people can get a little tangled up in like consciousness. Is it enlightenment? Do I have to become this like enlightened being, or like what's the goal? And I think Courtney, you've mentioned something about like, oh God, is this ever going to be done? Or Bert, you mentioned earlier, like having this Herculean lifelong task. Like what is the goal, or how do we break this down for people that feel like, is this ever going to be done, or why even start? Because I have so much stuff going on. I don't even know where to start. And it's just better to drink the 6-pack and sit on the couch.
I have part of an answer. I just remembered a conversation with my friend years ago. I asked her the same thing. I'm like, "What's the point? It's painful sometimes. This is really a pain in the booty sometimes, and I feel bad about myself sometimes, and keep failing in this, trying to be more conscious. What's the point? Why bother?" And she said, "I have a feeling that if you don't bother, that there'll be a moment in your life, maybe even on your deathbed, where you kind of look back and say, 'I think I missed something.'" And that really stuck with me because I think when you do follow this path of consciousness, we're kind of framing it as it's work and it's practices, but there's joy and there's connection and there's fulfillment and there's like real beauty, like just mind shattering beauty, and so much that comes forth that doesn't come from a 6-pack of beer, that doesn't come from Netflix, that doesn't come from another promotion or a raise. But it is kind of our birthright to have this joyful life that unfolds and takes care of you and the beings around you. And I think if you can kind of tune into that, it's really cool. It's really cool. And I also think when you start to tune into that, you don't need there to be an end, because it's just great to be on the path and be on along the way. I mean, we're doing it now. It's really great.
And that is the whole point, right? Is like, why are we doing this? Thank you for saying that, Courtney. Because I feel better. Because I'm happy. Because I can weather the storm with greater ease and sensitivity. I know myself better. I like myself better. I want to show up in the world in bigger and better and more aligned ways, rather than kind of stay hidden and shy away and let my fears keep me from engaging with my life fully. The joy is the is the why are we on the path of consciousness. um we are transmuting that pain and suffering into something that can really feed a beautiful, joyful, and joy-filled life, if we let it, if that's how we choose to direct that energy. And so for me, it's about creating, and whether it's creating stories or creating artwork through different mediums, it's expressing myself in a way that doesn't have limitations, that doesn't have, or rather doesn't have self-limiting beliefs attached to it. That doesn't rely on the expectation or approval of others to say that it's good. It is my expression in the world. And to me, that helps bring me greater depth of consciousness and awe and experience and beauty in the world. And I hope it also creates a channel to share that with other people, so they know that it's possible and they can find their own version of that on their path toward consciousness.
Amazing. Guys, just love it. Ooh. Yeah, right. It's that like the path is always ongoing. I this is just the beauty of life. We can walk this path of wonder and awe. I often find myself, like if I almost drop something and it doesn't break, or if I drop something and it doesn't break, I'm like, oh, thank you. Or like driving on the road and someone cuts me off and we don't get in an accident. There's a choice there to be like, you, blah, 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 or just say, thank you. We didn't get in an accident today, right? Like just those little shifts. And it's like, oh, it opens up that there's this whole other reality that is there outside of the kind of small construct of fear and needing to feel safe and that unconscious asleep type of thing. Yeah. I mean, the path on because I had somebody earlier say, like, isn't it scary for people to think about what happens when they let go of their stories or their beliefs? Absolutely terrifying. And 100% of the time, it's better on the other side. 100%.
And I will also add that, it's a different paradigm where a lot of us are in a culture or society where you're making some kind of progress or there's progress that's marked by something. Something's marking your progress. And I often wonder if people who are on a spiritual path still have a little bit of that mentality when they get into a spiritual path and are hoping to get some kind of accomplishment or level or something there because that's kind of part of the old paradigm.
I'm wondering where you both want to leave the conversation. We have a choice here in where we get to leave it. Where do you each want to leave the conversation today?
I think, just building self-awareness is that first step, is that opening door to consciousness and just inviting people to, if they, are new to the path, if this is all just first time hearing any of this, or if you're along the path, that's a muscle that can keep being worked, and to just invite people to keep doing it, for keep exercising those muscles of self-awareness and finding the joys and the wonders and awes in the world. And that's simple, but where I'd love to leave this very deep, amazing conversation we've had. I feel like we could talk for hours.
I love that. I love what you said about inviting people. And what came to mind for me was there's no invitation limit. Everyone's welcome. Everyone can join. There's always a place for you. You don't have to be a certain way or have a certain kind of bracelets or have a certain kind of dress a certain way or whatever. There's always room. Um, you're the type of person that can do this. There's not and everything that you're looking for could be right in some of this exploration. And so I would want to kind of close this out with an open invitation for people. It's difficult. It's a difficult time in the world, and there are people and understandings and ways of being that are pretty amazing.
In our work and in supporting classes, I hear people ask all the time, like, how can I heal my whole lineage line? Or how can I heal this whole system or structure or oppression? Or what can I do to affect the wars that are happening across the planet right now? And our teacher, I'm paraphrasing here, has often said, you can't change those people. You can only change yourself. And you would be surprised if we took all of the energy that we spent trying to change other people or the world around us and focused it on knowing ourselves, then the impact that that has on those around us and on the world. And that's something that I come back to all the time in this place is I can work on me and I can pursue consciousness and share that and show up and know and trust that that has a positive impact on the world around me. And that's invaluable. I feel like in the world we live in. So
Yeah, I mean, I think consciousness doesn't eliminate pain, but it changes our relationship to it, to your point. Like, you can't go back and change things. You can't change things about your life, but you can change the way that you function and move around with your own experience.
well, in terms of cultivating consciousness, what is some joy in your experience this week, Courtney?
Being on this call with you too. It's bringing me so much joy. It's really bringing me so much joy. Thank you.
Being on this call with you guys, and I just love it. I love you too. I love this work. I love that we get to do this. Um, I got to go spend time with my four-legged furry friends on the farm on Saturday, and I play with some donkeys and mini horses, and it was our mini horse baby, Mister, that's his name. It was his first birthday. So we had a little birthday party for Mister, and he got to eat an apple for the first time, and it brought him so much joy. and his little buddy Theodore, who was about 8 months old. They got to share an apple, and they're like attached to each other as little friends. So it just brought me so much joy to be in their lovely, happy way that they move through the world. What
Can
was
I
giving you
can
joy?
I add one more thing that's bringing me joy? On Saturday, I got to go on a hike in a beautiful place, and there was kind of a super bloom going on. There's a lot of early spring blossoms and a lot of California native wild flowers, wild plants blooming. And I got to walk through this beautiful scenery and point out the different things that I recognized and stop and look at things that I didn't recognize. And as we got over the hill, I realized that there had been a fire there a few years ago, and that what we were looking at was the regeneration of this space and the plants that are supposed to be there and all of that in this moment. And it really brought me a lot of joy to see that, um, life coming back. It brought me a lot of joy to see life coming back to this place that had seen such destruction a couple years ago.
Watching life grow is my joy today. A couple days ago, I received 16 fruit and nut trees, bare root, that needed planting on the farm. It's been a dream of mine to expand the farm in ways that are meaningful, that support the wildlife, that support the people that are here, that honor the culture and heritage of the land that's here, and also think about bringing back wildlife and pollinators and those types of things. And so to be able to go out and take a piece of land that was otherwise kind of ignored and not really well cared for, kind of hard to access, but making the effort to get up there and clearing the space and prepping it and digging the holes and planting the trees, and then stepping back and seeing it, like, wow, this gets to grow now, and this is a meaningful, tangible contribution to the life that I'm saying that I want to live and choosing to live. And I also really enjoy farm sim games, and so this is like a real world, like, you clear the plot and you plant the seeds and you water them, and then you watch them grow, of course on a much slower timeline, but it is bringing me so much joy, um, just to have been in the dirt and been with the land and to see how the land is coming alive in this way, and that I get to watch it continue. Right? There's not an expectation to an outcome so much as there is a joy for um, getting to watch these trees grow season by season and produce fruit and support the life on the farm. That's what's bringing me some joy today. And this call is bringing me a lot of joy today. Wow, that was incredible. Thank you both so much. What an amazing conversation on consciousness. I am so looking forward to next time when we talk about practices and rituals and how to weave them in and through our experience to be able to bring consciousness forward. Thank you again for a wonderful conversation.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget to check our show notes for links and resources from today's episode. And if you enjoyed this episode of Inner Threads, consider sharing it with a friend. Your ratings and reviews help others like you join the conversation. And if there's a topic or question you have that you'd like to hear on Inner Threads, drop us a line. We love hearing from you.